She witnessed as her millionaire CEO husband kissed his maid before her. She took her daughter and left. 5 years later. You don't get to look at me like that, Nathan. Not after 5 years of silence. The conference room fell eerily quiet. Executives from both companies froze mid-conversation as Olivia Wright stood, tall, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside her. The man across the table, impeccable in his tailored suit, the very picture of corporate success, was a stranger who knew all her secrets. Silence. I respected your wishes, Olivia. You disappeared with our daughter without a single word. Without a word? Olivia's laugh held no humor. The night I left, you were too busy with Elena's lips to notice I was even in the room. The 10-year-old girl beside Olivia stiffened, her curious eyes darting between the adults. Mom, you said we were just meeting with potential investors about my science project. Her voice was steady despite the confusion in her eyes. You never said it would be his company. Welcome to Cedar Light Love Stories. If you believe love still lights the darkest nights, you're in the right place. Subscribe now for timeless tales of passion, heartbreak, and hope. Stories that touch your heart and linger in your soul. Hit the bell, join our growing family, and let's keep love's flame burning, one story at a time. Nathan Wright took a step forward, his expression raw with longing as he looked at his daughter. Sophie, he whispered, you've grown so much. I've missed everything. Welcome to Cedar Light Love Stories. Today's tale explores what happens when a painful past collides with an unexpected future. When a woman who chose dignity over drama must face the husband she left behind, and when a brilliant young girl discovers that her science project has led her directly back to the father she barely remembers. Have you ever wondered if some betrayals cut too deep to ever heal? Or if time and growth can transform even the most broken relationships? Stay with me to discover how this family's journey unfolds, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss our stories of love, loss, and redemption. Now, let me take you back 5 years, to the night everything changed for Olivia Wright and her 5-year-old daughter. The lights of Manhattan glittered like fallen stars beneath the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Wright Innovations headquarters. Olivia smoothed her burgundy silk dress as the elevator climbed to the executive floor. The company's 5th anniversary celebration would be starting soon in the main event space, but she wanted to surprise Nathan in his office first. Their own anniversary had passed 3 weeks earlier with only a hurried video call from London, and she'd barely seen him since. These moments had become precious, rare glimpses of the man she'd fallen in love with in graduate school, before Wright Innovations consumed every corner of their lives. Before board meetings and investor calls replaced family dinners and weekend trips to their lake house. Before her own promising career as an art curator had been packed away, deemed less important than supporting his vision. It's worth it, she reminded herself. Look at what he's built. Look at what they'd built together, even if her contributions had become increasingly invisible to the world, and sometimes it seemed, to Nathan himself. The elevator doors slid open silently. Olivia stepped into the hushed executive floor, her heels clicking softly against the polished marble. The space was deserted, the staff already gathered downstairs for the celebration. She'd left Sophie with her favorite babysitter, promising to bring her back a chocolate fountain dessert from the party. As she approached Nathan's office, she heard low voices. The door was slightly ajar, a slice of warm light spilling into the darkened hallway. Olivia slowed her steps, a smile forming. He wasn't alone, probably finishing some last-minute business before the celebration. She reached for the door, then froze as a woman's laugh filtered through the gap. Intimate. Familiar. Tonight's your victory lap, Nathan. 5 years from startup to industry giant. You should be proud. Elena Vasquez, their household manager of 3 years. The woman who organized their lives, managed their Manhattan penthouse, and apparently, Olivia realized as she silently pushed the door open a few inches wider, had become indispensable to her husband in other ways as well. They stood by the window, city lights illuminating their reflection in the glass. Nathan's back was to the door, his arms wrapped around Elena's waist. Her head tilted up toward him, red lips curved in satisfaction. None of this would be possible without you, Nathan said, his voice carrying clearly to where Olivia stood, unseen. You understand what I'm building here. what it takes to succeed. I understand you, Elena replied, her manicured fingers tracing his jaw better than she ever could. The kiss that followed wasn't a surprise. Olivia had already assembled the pieces of this betrayal. Snapshots of late nights and weekend emergencies, of texted apologies and cooling dinner plates. What surprised her was her own reaction, not rage or hysterics, but a cold, clear certainty washing over her like winter rain. This was not a momentary lapse. This was not a drunken mistake. This was Nathan making a choice, over and over again, for months. This was Elena, calculating and confident, claiming territory she'd clearly marked long ago. Olivia stepped back silently, the burgundy dress suddenly feeling like a costume from someone else's life. She turned and walked to the elevator, her movements mechanical, her mind already calculating what she needed to do next. By morning, Nathan Wright would discover that his wife and daughter had vanished from his carefully constructed world, leaving nothing but a handwritten note on the kitchen counter. You've made your choice. We won't be your afterthought. 5 years later, in a sunlit kitchen overlooking Central Park, Olivia poured herself a second cup of coffee and surveyed the stack of envelopes on the table before her. Official letterheads from tech companies across the country, all addressed to her 10-year-old daughter, all expressing interest in the renewable energy device she had developed for her school science competition. Sophie, you're going to be late for school, she called, breaking the trance of staring at the letters. The quiet life she'd carefully built for them in this corner of New York was suddenly feeling less quiet, less safely anonymous. Coming, Sophie's voice drifted down from upstairs, followed by the sound of rapidly descending footsteps. Sophie Wright slid into the kitchen with the gangly energy of a child in perpetual motion. Tall for 10, with her father's intense blue eyes and Olivia's chestnut waves, she moved directly to the refrigerator with single-minded focus. Did you finish your math homework? Olivia asked, watching her assemble a breakfast that would horrify nutritionists. Last night. Ms. Patel already checked my work during STEM Club. Sophie glanced at the stack of letters, a flicker of excitement crossing her face. Any new ones? 2 more arrived yesterday, Quantum Technologies and Helios Innovations. She deliberately didn't mention the third letter, the one bearing the distinctive Wright Innovations logo that she'd hidden in her desk drawer, uncertain how to address it. Helios is doing amazing work with solar technology, Sophie said, enthusiasm lighting her features. Their head engineer wrote that paper on efficiency algorithms I showed you. Olivia nodded, familiar with her daughter's passionate explanations even when the technical details eluded her. Since she was small, Sophie had demonstrated an intuitive understanding of science, and engineering that unnerved her with its resemblance to Nathan's natural abilities. She had encouraged her talents while simultaneously guarding her from the high-pressure tech world that had consumed her father. We still need to discuss how to handle all this interest, she said, gesturing to the letters. These companies don't typically pursue elementary school science projects unless they see significant commercial potential. Mom, it's not just a science project. There was a hint of frustration in her voice. The microturbine system I developed could revolutionize how we capture and store wind energy in urban environments. It works on a different principle than current systems. I know it's important work, honey. Olivia reached across the counter to touch her hand. I'm just saying we need to be careful. These are powerful companies with armies of lawyers. You're 10, not 40. Sophie's expression softened. I know. That's why I have you. She checked her watch. I gotta go. Zoe's mom is driving us today. As she gathered her backpack, Olivia made a decision. Sophie, I think we should arrange one meeting with representatives from the most promising companies. Let them present their interest formally with me present, and then we can evaluate options. Her face lit up. Seriously? When? Where? I'll set something up for next week. A neutral location, not at any company's offices. She kept her voice steady, despite the anxiety churning beneath her calm exterior. This is awesome. Sophie hugged her impulsively, a gesture becoming rarer as she grew older. Thank you for understanding how important this is. After she left, Olivia sat alone at the kitchen table, the courage of her decision already wavering. Meetings with tech companies meant risk. Risk of running into old colleagues, friends who'd chosen sides after her abrupt departure, risk of uncomfortable questions about her past, and the risk she'd avoided for 5 years, the possibility of Nathan discovering where they were, who they'd become. She pulled out her phone and dialed a familiar number. "Maya, it's me. I need your advice about something." Her younger sister had been her rock through the darkest days after leaving Nathan. While their parents had quietly disapproved of Olivia throwing away a perfectly good marriage over what they assumed was a simple indiscretion, Maya had helped her find an apartment, watched Sophie while Olivia rebuilt her career, and never once questioned her decision to leave. "What's up, Liv?" Maya's voice held its usual cheerful energy. "It's about Sophie's invention. The interest from tech companies is getting serious. I've decided to arrange a meeting, but—" She trailed off, the unspoken concerns hanging between them. "You're worried about Right Innovations," Maya finished, cutting to the heart of the matter as always. "Have you seen the letter from his company yet?" Olivia froze. "How did you know about that?" "Sophie mentioned it when I called yesterday, said she was excited that even the legendary Right Innovations was interested in her work." Olivia's stomach dropped. "She doesn't make the connection, Maya. To her, Right Innovations is just another tech company, not her father's legacy." "She was 5 when you left," Maya replied gently. "She remembers Nathan, but not the details of his business. I know you've been honest about why you left, but you've never demonized him to her." "I know. You're right." Olivia pinched the bridge of her nose. "But what do I do? Exclude Right Innovations from the meeting? That would raise questions from Sophie. Include them and risk—" She couldn't finish the thought. "Risk seeing Nathan again?" Maya completed gently. "Liv, maybe it's time. Sophie's growing up. She'll have questions about her father that will only get more complicated. And you're not the same woman who left 5 years ago. You're stronger now." Olivia glanced at her home office, visible through the doorway. The walls were lined with art books and exhibition catalogs from shows she'd curated. After leaving Nathan, she'd rebuilt her career, first at a small gallery in Brooklyn, then gradually working her way up to her current position as associate curator at the Hamilton Museum of Modern Art. Her work now earned respect in the art world without anyone knowing she was the former Olivia Wright, once the perfectly polished wife of tech innovator Nathan Wright. "I'll include them," she decided finally, "but I'll specify that they send representatives, not executives. With luck, it will be some mid-level technology scouts, not him." "And if luck doesn't hold?" Maya asked. "Then I'll face whatever comes, for Sophie's sake." After ending the call, she removed the Right Innovations letter from her desk drawer, finally breaking the seal. The contents were professional, expressing interest in Sophie's micro-turbine system after their technical team had reviewed her presentation at the regional science competition. The signature at the bottom belonged to Daniel Chen, Chief Innovation Officer, not Nathan. A small mercy, but one that made her decision slightly easier. She spent the afternoon composing a single email to all interested companies, arranging a meeting at a neutral conference facility the following week. Each company would have 30 minutes to present their interest in Sophie's work, with Olivia present as her legal guardian. Professional, straightforward, protective without being paranoid. She hit send before she could reconsider. What Olivia couldn't know was that across Manhattan in the gleaming Right Innovations headquarters, her email would trigger a chain of events that would shatter the careful separation she'd maintained for 5 years. Daniel Chen frowned at his computer screen, reading the response from Oak Heller regarding Sophie Wright's micro-turbine system. Something about the name had nagged at him when the technical team first flagged the innovation from an elementary school science competition. Now, seeing the full name, his suspicion crystallized into certainty. He picked up his phone and dialed an internal extension. "Nathan, we need to talk. My office, not yours." 20 minutes later, Nathan Wright strode through Daniel's door, radiating the confident authority that had built Right Innovations from ambitious startup to tech giant. At 40, he carried success like a bespoke suit, perfectly fitted, but with sharp edges that could cut the unwary. His dark hair was now threaded with silver at the temples, his features more angular than in his youth, carved by ambition and, though few would guess it, regret. "This better be important, Dan. I'm due in Washington tomorrow to brief the Energy Commission." Nathan remained standing, a man perpetually in motion. "Sit down," Daniel replied, unintimidated by his oldest friend and business partner. "You're going to want to be sitting for this." Something in his tone made Nathan comply. "A rare occurrence. What is it? Security breach? Acquisition problem?" "Sophie." The single word landed like a physical blow. Nathan went absolutely still, the name he rarely heard spoken aloud freezing him in place. "What about my daughter?" he asked, his voice carefully controlled. "She's developed a micro-turbine system that our team flagged as revolutionary. Adaptive energy capture capabilities beyond anything we've seen, especially from an elementary student." Daniel slid a tablet across the desk. "The technology itself is impressive, but look at the developer." Nathan stared at the screen, at the formal school portrait of a young girl with his own intense eyes and Olivia's heart-shaped face. Sophie Wright Keller, age 10, Westridge Academy, New York City. His daughter, the child he'd last seen as a sleeping 5-year-old, unaware that her world was about to change forever. "How long have you known where they were?" Nathan asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "I just connected the dots today," Daniel replied honestly, "when we received this response." He forwarded Olivia's email to Nathan's tablet. "She's arranged a meeting next week. All interested companies presenting their case for Sophie's invention." Nathan read the email, absorbing Olivia's careful wording, her clear boundaries, her protective stance toward their daughter. So like her, precise, thoughtful, fierce in defense of what she loved. His throat tightened with emotions he normally kept firmly contained. "She doesn't know I'll be there," he said, a statement rather than a question. "She's requested company representatives, not executives," Daniel pointed out. "You could respect that boundary." Nathan's laugh held no humor. 5 years, Dan. 5 years of respecting her boundaries, of honoring her decision to remove herself and my daughter from my life without a single conversation, without a chance to explain or make amends. "You didn't exactly give her reason to believe explanations would change anything," Daniel replied, the only person at Wright Innovations who could speak so bluntly to its CEO. "I told you Elena was trouble from the day you hired her. Ancient history." Nathan waved a dismissive hand, though his expression tightened at the mention of his former household manager and brief mistress. "Elena's been gone for years. Not before she nearly destroyed your marriage and damaged your company," Daniel reminded him. "And not before Olivia caught you with her and disappeared with your daughter." Nathan stood abruptly. "I'll be at that meeting next week. My daughter has created something valuable enough that multiple tech companies are pursuing her. I won't send some mid-level scout to determine whether Wright Innovations should be involved." His tone left no room for argument. "Prepare a proper presentation of what we can offer her, the best we have." As Nathan strode from his office, Daniel sighed heavily. He'd witnessed his friend's carefully constructed control in the years since Olivia left. The driven focus on the company, the meticulous avoidance of serious relationships. The private investigator reports on Sophie's well-being that Nathan thought he didn't know about. All of it a substitute for the family life he'd carelessly discarded. Next week would be a reckoning long overdue. Daniel only hoped that Olivia and Sophie wouldn't be collateral damage in whatever emotional storm had been brewing in Nathan Wright for 5 silent years. The morning of the meeting dawned clear and bright, sunlight glinting off Manhattan. Skyscrapers as Olivia and Sophie made their way to the conference center. Olivia had chosen neutral territory, a professional meeting space that hosted everything from corporate retreats to educational seminars. "Are you nervous?" she asked, watching Sophie fidget with her tablet containing presentation materials. "A little," she admitted. "These are serious companies, Mom. What if they ask technical questions I can't answer?" "Then you'll say you need to research further before responding," she replied calmly. "Remember, this isn't an exam. It's an opportunity to understand what these companies are offering and whether any of their proposals align with your vision for your work." Sophie nodded, squaring her shoulders. At 10, she still possessed the innocent confidence of childhood, but with flashes of the young woman she was becoming. Her features had sharpened over the past year, the resemblance to Nathan becoming more pronounced with each passing month. Sometimes it caught Olivia off guard. A certain expression, a gesture, the focused intensity when she worked, echoes of the man she'd left behind. The conference room she'd booked was designed for comfort rather than intimidation, a round table rather, than a corporate boardroom. Natural light from tall windows, an informal seating area in one corner. Olivia had arrived early to arrange the space, placing herself and Sophie at the point of the table farthest from the door, ensuring they wouldn't feel cornered. 5 companies, she reminded Sophie as they settled in. 30 minutes each, 15-minute breaks between. We're not making any decisions today. We're just listening. I know, Mom, she replied, with the patient toned 10-year-olds reserved for parents stating the obvious. Assessment phase, not commitment phase. Olivia smiled despite her nerves. Exactly. The first company representatives arrived precisely on time. Quantum Technologies, represented by a serious woman in her 40s and a younger man with eager energy. They presented a straightforward proposal, a generous licensing arrangement for Sophie's microturbine system with mentorship opportunities and future internship possibilities. Helios Innovations followed with a more academic approach, emphasizing research opportunities and the potential for Sophie to continue developing her work with their renewable energy division. The representatives were clearly impressed with her technical understanding, engaging her in a detailed discussion that occasionally left Olivia struggling to follow. By the 4th presentation, Olivia was beginning to relax. The meetings were professional, the proposals respectful of Sophie's youth while acknowledging her exceptional talent. No one had attempted to pressure or manipulate, and each company seemed to understand her protective stance. Until the door opened for the 5th presentation and Nathan Wright walked in, Olivia's entire body tensed, recognition and alarm flooding her system before conscious thought could form. 5 years had added subtle refinements to his appearance, silver threading his dark hair, lines at the corners of his eyes that hadn't been there before. But the essential Nathan remained unchanged. The confident stance, the focused intensity, the commanding presence that filled any room he entered. Behind him came Daniel Chen, whose startled expression suggested he hadn't expected this confrontation any more than she had. At least there was one ally in the room, Olivia thought distantly. Daniel had always been kind to her, one of the few who had treated her as more than an appendage to Nathan's rising star. For a moment, the 4 of them were frozen in a tableau of recognition and shock. Then Sophie, oblivious to the undercurrent swirling through the room, stood and extended her hand with the politeness Olivia had instilled in her. Hello, I'm Sophie Keller-Wright. Thank you for your interest in my work. Nathan seemed unable to move, his gaze fixed on the daughter he hadn't seen in 5 years. Daniel stepped forward smoothly, shaking Sophie's hand. Daniel Chen, Chief Innovation Officer at Wright Innovations. And this is Nathan Wright, our founder and CEO. Sophie's eyes widened slightly at the name, then darted to her mother's rigid face. Understanding dawned in her expression, not complete, but enough to recognize something significant was happening. Right, she repeated softly. Like my middle name. Yes. Nathan finally spoke, his voice rougher than Olivia remembered. Like your middle name. He extended his hand to his daughter, the gesture formal yet fraught with unspoken emotion. It's good to meet you, Sophie. The lie, or rather the omission, hung in the air between them. Olivia found her voice at last, rising to stand beside her daughter. I believe I specified company representatives in my communication, not executives, she said, her tone clipped. When it comes to innovations of this caliber, I represent the company. Personally, Nathan replied, finally turning his attention to her. The full force of his gaze after 5 years felt like a physical impact. Hello, Olivia. Mom? Sophie's question contained volumes, her perceptive mind rapidly connecting dots. It was the moment when pretense became impossible, when the careful narrative Olivia had constructed, truthful but incomplete, began to crumble. You don't get to look at me like that, Nathan. Not after 5 years of silence, she said, the words emerging with a calm she didn't feel. Silence. I respected your wishes, Olivia. You disappeared with our daughter without a single word. Without a word? Olivia's laugh held no humor. The night I left, you were too busy with Elena's lips to notice I was even in the room. The conference room froze in uncomfortable silence as the former couple stared at each other, 5 years of unspoken pain hanging between them. The 10-year-old girl stood rigid, memories of her father, faded but not forgotten. Suddenly colliding with the powerful CEO now standing before them. "Mom, you said we were just meeting with potential investors about my science project," Sophie said, her voice steady despite the shock in her eyes. "You never said it would be his company." Nathan took a step forward, his expression raw with longing as he looked at his daughter. "You've grown so much," he whispered. "I've missed everything." Daniel cleared his throat, breaking the charged silence. "Perhaps we should reschedule this particular presentation. Give everyone some time to process." "No," Sophie said suddenly, surprising them all. "No more secrets, no more partial truths." She turned to Nathan, her gaze direct and unflinching in a way that echoed his own demeanor. "You're my father." "Yes," Nathan confirmed, something like pride flickering across his features at his daughter's composure. "The businessman who chose his company over his family," Sophie continued, repeating the careful phrasing Olivia had used over the years. "The reason we left New York when I was 5. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he didn't deny the characterization. "It's more complicated than that, but the essence is accurate." "Then explain it," Sophie demanded, sinking back into her chair. "All of it. Before we discuss any business proposals, I want to understand exactly who you are and what happened 5 years ago." Olivia felt a surge of protective instinct. "Sophie, this isn't the time or place." "It's exactly the time and place," she interrupted, the rare defiance showing how deeply the revelation had affected her. "I've wondered for years, had dreams about a father who was too busy for school plays and science fairs, created stories in my head about why we never talk about him, why we left everything behind." She looked between her parents. "I deserve the truth. The whole truth. If you're captivated by this family's moment of truth, hit the like button. I'd love to know what you think would happen next. Would you forgive someone after 5 years of separation, or are some betrayals too deep to heal? Share your thoughts in the comments below." The silence that followed Sophie's demand was weighted with recognition that the brilliant, perceptive child they both shaped in different ways was right. She deserved more than carefully edited histories and protective omissions. Nathan was the first to move, pulling out a chair across from Sophie and, sitting down, a gesture of equal footing rather than executive authority. "You're right," he said simply. "You deserve the truth. Where would you like me to begin?" Daniel stepped toward the door. "I'll give you privacy." "Stay," Nathan interrupted, surprising his friend. "You were there for all of it. Your perspective matters too." Olivia slowly resumed her seat beside Sophie, her hand finding her daughter's under the table in a gesture of solidarity. Whatever came next, she wanted Sophie to know she was with her, supporting her, even as uncomfortable truths emerged. "Start at the beginning," Sophie said, her voice steadier than a 10-year-old's had any right to be in such a moment. "How you met. What happened. Why you weren't there when I woke up that morning 5 years ago." Nathan's gaze flickered to Olivia, a silent question in his eyes. She nodded almost imperceptibly. There would be no protecting any of them from the past now. "I met your mother at Columbia," Nathan began, his voice softer than the commanding tone he typically used. "I was finishing my MBA, focused on tech entrepreneurship. She was completing her master's in art history, brilliant and beautiful and completely unimpressed by my ambitious plans." A ghost of a smile touched Olivia's lips despite herself, remembering the graduate student mixer where they'd first argued passionately about whether technology enhanced or diminished artistic expression. She'd found him arrogant and captivating in equal measure. "We were an unlikely match," Nathan continued, his eyes briefly meeting hers before returning to Sophie. "Different worlds, different visions, but something just worked between us. Your mother challenged me, made me consider perspectives beyond profit margins and market share. I like to think I opened her eyes to how technology could democratize access to art and culture." "You complemented each other," Sophie observed astutely. "Yes," Olivia spoke for the first time, her voice quiet. "We balanced each other. For a while." "What changed?" Sophie asked, looking between them. Nathan's expression tightened. "Success. The company grew faster than we anticipated. What started as long hours for a promising startup became all-consuming. Board meetings, investor pitches, International expansion. I told myself it was temporary, that once Right Innovations was established, I'd find balance again. But that never happened, Daniel added from where he stood by the window. Success bred more success and more demands. The company became a voracious entity that consumed everything around it, Olivia finished quietly. Including our family. Sophie processed this, her analytical mind visibly connecting pieces of a puzzle long obscured. But that's not why you left, Mom. You said you found him with someone else, our household manager. The blunt statement hung in the air, the teenage directness leaving no room for euphemisms or evasions. Nathan's face hardened, shame and regret briefly visible before his customary control reasserted itself. Elena Vasquez, he confirmed, not shirking responsibility, hired to manage our home, our schedules. What I didn't recognize until too late was her talent for manipulation, for making herself seem indispensable both professionally and personally. That doesn't excuse what happened, Olivia interjected sharply. No, it doesn't, Nathan agreed, surprising her with his immediate acknowledgement. The choices were mine. The betrayal was mine. Whatever Elena's manipulations, I was a willing participant in the destruction of our family. The stark admission silenced even Sophie momentarily. Olivia studied Nathan's face, searching for the defensive justifications she'd imagined he would offer if they ever had this conversation. Instead, she found only raw acceptance of responsibility. The night of the company's 5th anniversary celebration, she explained to Sophie. Filling in the narrative, I came early to surprise your father in his office. Instead, I saw him with Elena. Intimate, connected. It wasn't a momentary lapse or a drunken mistake. It was... She faltered, the memory still painful despite the years between. It was the culmination of months of deterioration in our marriage, Nathan finished for her. Months of my absence, my distraction, my failure to prioritize what mattered most. So you left? Sophie said to her mother. Took me and disappeared? Yes, Olivia confirmed. I packed what we needed that night, left a note, and left. I had no real plan except to get away from the pain, from the humiliation, from the life that had slowly become something I no longer recognized. I came home to an empty house, Nathan continued, the memory visibly affecting him even 5 years later. Your bedroom was missing your favorite stuffed rabbit, and your space-themed nightlight. Your mother's closet had gaps where certain clothes had been, and on the kitchen counter a note, "You've made your choice. We won't be your afterthought." Did you look for us? Sophie asked, the question direct and unavoidable. A complicated exchange of glances passed between the adults in the room. Daniel looked particularly uncomfortable, shifting his weight as if wanting to speak but restraining himself. Not immediately, Nathan admitted. I respected your mother's decision. She had every right to leave after what I'd done. He paused. I thought it was a clean break. Better for everyone, especially you. That's not the whole truth, Daniel interjected suddenly. Nathan, tell her everything. Tension filled the conference room as Daniel's words hung in the air. Nathan's jaw clenched, a muscle working visibly beneath his skin. This isn't the time, Dan, he said, his voice low with warning. If not now, when? Daniel challenged, stepping forward. 5 years of half-truths is enough. Sophie looked between them, her analytical mind clearly cataloging every reaction. What's the whole truth? She asked, her gaze settling on her father. Nathan exhaled slowly, resignation replacing resistance. After your mother left with you, I ended things with Elena immediately, the night of the anniversary party. That's what you weren't telling me? Olivia asked, confusion evident in her expression. That you ended the affair after I was already gone? That's not it, Nathan interrupted. The truth is that I did look for you. Both of you. Not immediately. I respected your need for space, for time to process what had happened. But 3 months later, when the pain hadn't diminished and the silence had become unbearable, I hired investigators. Surprise flickered across Olivia's features. You never contacted us. Because I never found you, Nathan replied, frustration edging his voice. Or rather, I found traces. A rental car returned in Brooklyn, a temporary apartment in Queens, art lectures attended under your maiden name, but each time I got close, the trail went cold. You'd moved on, changed names, built new identities. I was protecting our daughter, Olivia countered defensively. From me? The hurt in Nathan's question was raw, unfiltered. From becoming a pawn, she clarified, her voice softening slightly. From being pulled between warring parents, from publicity, from the world. You inhabit where everything is valued in dollars and market share. Sophie shifted in her seat, absorbing this new information. So, you've been looking for us all this time? Nathan's gaze dropped to the table, something like shame crossing his features. Not continuously. The investigators hit too many dead ends, and Right Innovations was at a critical juncture, expanding internationally, developing new energy technologies, facing increased competition. So you chose the company again, Sophie concluded, her tone neutral but her eyes reflecting disappointment. I told myself I was respecting your mother's wishes, Nathan admitted, that my absence from your life was what she wanted, what was best for you. He paused. It was easier than admitting I didn't know how to be the father you deserved. That's still not everything, Daniel interjected, his expression troubled. Tell them about Elena. Olivia stiffened visibly at the name, old pain flashing across her features. Nathan shot Daniel a warning look, but his friend remained steadfast. They deserve to know, Nathan. All of it. Silence stretched between them before Nathan nodded, a short, sharp gesture of acquiescence. After your mother left with you, Elena's behavior changed. The supportive partner became controlling, demanding. She leveraged her position to push for access to company information. Partnerships I'd previously rejected as compromising user privacy. She saw an opening when Olivia left, Daniel explained. Thought she could shape the company, and Nathan, to her vision. When I ended the relationship, she didn't take it well, Nathan continued. Started undermining me with the board, with key employees. Claimed I was unstable after my family's departure, that my leadership was compromised. His expression hardened. Then I discovered she'd been selling early access to our energy technologies to competitors. Corporate espionage, Sophie said, quickly grasping the implications. Nathan nodded. Exactly. But, when confronted, she threatened to take her story public, to paint herself as the victim of workplace harassment, to claim I'd pressured her into the relationship. The scandal would have destabilized the company at a critical growth phase, potentially cost thousands of jobs, Daniel added. So you paid her off, Olivia surmised, her art curator's eye for human motivation still sharp. Yes and no, Daniel interjected. We structured a generous departure package in exchange for her silence and a non-compete agreement. But we also gathered enough evidence of her corporate espionage to ensure mutual destruction if she ever broke that silence. Sophie leaned forward, eyes narrowed in concentration. What does this have to do with why you stopped looking for us? The question struck at the heart of what remained unspoken. Nathan's gaze met Daniel's briefly before returning to his daughter's face. Elena made it clear that if I continued searching for you, she would find a way to use that pursuit to harm your mother's reputation, to paint her as unstable, unfit, to drag both of you into a public spectacle. Nathan's voice tightened with old anger. I couldn't risk exposing you to that, so I stopped the active search. Convinced myself it was better to let you both live in peace. Olivia's expression reflected stunned disbelief. You were protecting us? All this time I thought that I'd chosen my company over my family. Again Nathan completed her thought, regret evident in his tone. In some ways, perhaps I did, but I also chose what I believed was your safety and privacy over my desire to be part of your lives. Sophie sat absolutely still, processing this revelation with the same intense focus she applied to complex scientific problems. So neither of you actually wanted me to grow up without my father, she said finally, the statement carrying the weight of a conclusion rather than a question. The simple, devastating truth of her words hung in the air. Both parents turned to her, identical expressions of pained recognition on their faces. No, honey, Olivia said softly. That was never what I wanted for you. I would have given anything to watch you grow up, Nathan added, his customary control slipping to reveal the depth of his regret. Daniel moved toward the door. I think you three need time alone. The official Right Innovations presentation can wait. As he departed, closing the door silently behind him, the remaining three sat in weighted silence, a family fractured 5 years earlier now, facing the complex task of determining what, if anything, could be salvaged. From the wreckage of misunderstanding and missed opportunities, Sophie was the first to speak, her pragmatic nature asserting itself. So what happens now? It was the question at the heart of everything. A question without simple answers. A question that would require all three of them to navigate unfamiliar emotional territory. That depends, Nathan replied, his gaze moving from his daughter to Olivia. On what you both want. I want to understand my invention's potential, Sophie said, surprising both adults with her return to the original purpose of their meeting, including what Right Innovations envisions for it. Then I want to make an informed decision about which company's proposal best aligns with my goals for the technology. A flicker of pride crossed Nathan's face at his daughter's composed, logical approach, so similar to his own way of compartmentalizing complex problems. And after that? He asked carefully. Sophie's expression softened slightly, the precocious scientist giving way to the 10-year-old girl beneath. After that, I want to know my father. Not just the tech CEO. The person, the simple request, delivered without drama or recrimination, visibly affected Nathan. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak immediately. Olivia reached for her daughter's hand. Whatever you decide about your invention, about your relationship with your father, I support you, Sophie. I always will. I know, Mom. Her smile carried the wisdom of a child who had never doubted her mother's devotion, even when questioning her decisions. You've always protected me, but maybe now it's time to stop running. Her words landed with gentle precision, acknowledging the pattern that had shaped their lives since leaving Manhattan, moving apartments in the early years, changing schools, maintaining the buffer of her mother's maiden name, always one step removed, always slightly guarded, always ready to disappear again if necessary. Maybe it is, Olivia agreed quietly, the admission clearly difficult for her. Nathan watched this exchange with careful attention, clearly recognizing the significant shift in Olivia's protective stance. For what it's worth, he said carefully, Right Innovations has developed significantly since you left. Our focus has shifted toward renewable energy solutions for developing communities, sustainable infrastructure, education initiatives. We're still profitable, still competitive, but with a clearer ethical framework. Because of what happened with Elena? Olivia asked. Partly, Nathan acknowledged. Her actions forced me to reevaluate our corporate values, our priorities. But it was also because of you. Both of you. His gaze moved between them. Your absence made me confront what I'd sacrificed for success, what truly mattered beyond market dominance. For the first time since his arrival, Olivia's expression toward him softened slightly. I'd like to see your presentation on Sophie's invention, she said properly. As originally planned, it was a small opening, a tentative step towards something like civilized interaction. Nathan recognized it as such, nodding with careful restraint rather than eager enthusiasm. Of course. I can call Daniel back. Have him bring in the materials. Actually, Sophie interjected, I'd like to hear it from you directly, not the polished corporate presentation. Your personal assessment of what my innovation could achieve within Right Innovations. The request, direct, challenging, reminded both parents of the perceptive child they'd created. Neither artificial corporate enthusiasm nor emotional manipulation would sway this serious young girl. She wanted substance, authenticity. All right, Nathan agreed, setting aside the tablet containing his prepared presentation. Your microturbine system fundamentally rethinks how we capture and store wind energy in urban environments. Traditional turbines use size and height to maximize capture. Yours uses networked arrays of microturbines that can be integrated into existing architecture, buildings, bridges, even lampposts. Sophie nodded, confirming this assessment of her work. The existing paradigm requires dedicated wind farms or massive individual turbines. Yours doesn't. Exactly, Nathan continued, warming to the technical discussion. At Right Innovations, we could integrate your system into our urban renewal projects, which currently incorporates solar and geothermal elements. The potential applications are virtually limitless and frankly revolutionary. For city environments where traditional wind capture is impractical, what about the ethical guidelines? Sophie asked. What restrictions would you place on its implementation? What transparency measures for users? The questions revealed concerns beyond mere technical applications. Concerns that reflected values Olivia had clearly instilled in her daughter. Nathan seemed to recognize this, his expression thoughtful. We maintain strict ethical protocols for all our energy implementations: community, consent, transparent impact assessments, regular third-party audits. After the situation with Elena, I instituted additional oversight measures, including an ethics board comprising energy experts, environmental advocates, and community specialists. Impressive, Olivia murmured, genuine surprise in her voice. Necessary, Nathan corrected. Technology without ethical boundaries becomes dangerous very quickly. Something I learned the hard way. Their conversation continued for nearly an hour, the formal presentation structure abandoned in favor of authentic dialogue about the invention's potential, the company's capabilities, and the values that would guide its implementation. Throughout, Sophie asked incisive questions that revealed both technical brilliance and ethical awareness beyond her years. When they finally concluded, Nathan glanced at his watch reluctantly. I have a conference call with our Tokyo office in 30 minutes that I can't reschedule. Of course, Olivia replied, the automatic response of someone who had once organized her life around such corporate obligations. But after that, Nathan continued, his gaze fixed on Sophie. I'm completely available. If you'd like to continue our conversation, perhaps dinner? The invitation hung in the air, its significance extending beyond a simple meal. Sophie looked to her mother, a silent question in her expression. It's your decision, Olivia told her, though Nathan could see the tension in her shoulders, the protective instincts still active beneath her composed exterior. I'd like that, Sophie decided. Dinner. The three of us. The specification, the three of us, clarified her expectation that this would be a family discussion, not separate conversations with each parent. Nathan and Olivia exchanged glances, both recognizing the boundary their daughter had established. There's a restaurant near our apartment, Olivia offered. 7 o'clock? I'll be there, Nathan promised, rising to leave. He hesitated, clearly uncertain about the appropriate farewell after such an emotionally charged encounter. Thank you, both of you, for listening, for considering. The simple gratitude, free from presumption or entitlement, seemed to surprise Olivia. She nodded, a small acknowledgement that didn't promise forgiveness but at least suggested willingness to continue the dialogue. As Nathan departed, Sophie turned to her mother, her expression serious. Why didn't you ever tell me he looked for us? Because I didn't know, Olivia replied honestly. I never saw any evidence of a search. No contact from investigators, no legal proceedings, nothing. Would you have responded if there had been? Sophie pressed, her question direct but not accusatory. Olivia considered this with the thoughtfulness her daughter had inherited. I don't know, she admitted finally. At first, I was so hurt, so angry. I might have rejected any overture. Later, when the pain had dulled somewhat, perhaps, for your sake, if nothing else. Sophie absorbed this, her expression contemplative. I used to dream about him coming to find us, she said quietly. When I was younger, I'd imagine him appearing at school one day or at the park, saying he'd been searching everywhere. The confession pierced Olivia's heart. Despite her efforts to provide a complete and loving life for her daughter, she had never been able to fill the father-shaped absence. I'm sorry, honey. I thought I was protecting you. You were, Sophie assured her quickly. I understand that. But now we need to figure out a new path forward. One step at a time, Olivia completed for her. If this story of family secrets and potential reconciliation has touched your heart, please hit the subscribe button to join our community of storytellers and listeners. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment when you realized that things you believed to be true weren't the whole story? They spent the afternoon in their apartment, Sophie reviewing her notes from the various company presentations, while Olivia attempted to process the morning's revelations, the knowledge that Nathan had searched for them, that he had ended things with Elena immediately after she left, that his silence had been at least partially motivated by protection rather than indifference. All of it required a significant recalibration of the narrative she'd constructed over 5 years. By the time they headed to the restaurant, Olivia had settled into cautious neutrality. She would neither oppose nor encourage whatever relationship might develop between Sophie and her father. She would maintain boundaries while allowing possibilities. It was the best she could manage given the emotional whiplash of the day. Nathan was already waiting in the restaurant lobby when they arrived, having exchanged his business suit for more casual attire, dark jeans and a navy sweater that reminded Olivia uncomfortably of their early days together. He stood when he saw them approach, his expression a careful balance of hope and restraint. "Thank you for coming," he said simply. "Thank you for being on time," Olivia replied, a reference to his frequent lateness during their marriage that surprised even her with its casual familiarity. A ghost of a smile touched his lips at the gentle jab. Some lessons eventually sink in. The maitre d' led them to a quiet corner table, slightly removed from the main dining area. Olivia suspected Nathan had arranged this privacy in advance, his typical attention to logistical details unchanged by the years. Once seated, an awkward silence descended, the structured context of their earlier meeting now absent. It was Sophie who broke it, direct as always. "I've been thinking about your proposal for my invention," she said to Nathan. "I have some additional questions." "Of course," Nathan replied, visibly relieved to start with familiar technical territory. "The ethics board you mentioned, how often does it actually override executive decisions? Does it have real power, or is it just for show?" The challenging question might have offended some CEOs, but Nathan seemed to appreciate his daughter's directness. In its first year, it was admittedly more advisory than authoritative. Now, it has veto power over any implementation that raises significant ethical concerns. Last quarter, it blocked a government contract worth nearly $30 million because the potential for misuse was too high. "Which government?" Olivia asked, her own interest piqued despite her determination to remain neutral. "I can't say specifically due to NDAs, but one with a problematic human rights record," Nathan replied. "The contract would have significantly boosted our quarterly numbers, but the ethics board was unanimous in its rejection. I supported their decision, even with the impact on share value." Sophie pressed, revealing her understanding of corporate dynamics. "Even then, some principles matter more than profit margins." There was a certainty in Nathan's tone that caught Olivia's attention, a maturity that hadn't been present in the ambitious young CEO she'd left behind. "That's different from your approach 5 years ago," she observed, the statement neither accusation nor praise, simply acknowledgement. "Yes," Nathan agreed without defensiveness. "Losing you both forced me to reevaluate everything. My priorities, the company's direction, the legacy I wanted to build. Right innovation still leads the industry, but with a clearer moral compass." Their conversation paused as the waiter arrived to take their orders. Olivia noticed that Nathan remembered her dietary preferences, another small detail that unsettled her carefully maintained emotional distance. Once the waiter departed, Sophie steered the discussion in a more personal direction. "Tell me about when you met. The real story, not the sanitized version." Both parents seemed caught off guard by the request. They exchanged glances, a moment of shared memory passing between them despite the years of separation. "We argued about Pollock," Olivia said finally, a reluctant smile tugging at her lips. "At a graduate student mixer. Your father claimed abstract expressionism was emotional indulgence without technical merit." "I was an idiot," Nathan admitted, his own expression softening at the memory. 26. "And convinced I knew everything worth knowing. I called him a technocratic Philistine with the aesthetic sensitivity of a spreadsheet," Olivia continued, the description drawing a surprised laugh from Sophie, and then proceeded to deliver a passionate 15-minute lecture on Pollock's technical innovations and artistic significance while he stood there, completely mesmerized. Not by the art history lesson, though that was impressive, Nathan added quietly. By her, by the fire in her eyes when she talked about something that mattered to her. I'd never met anyone so authentically passionate. The admission created a moment of uncomfortable intimacy, a reminder of the connection that had once existed between them. Olivia shifted slightly in her seat, redirecting the conversation. "Your father asked me to coffee afterward to continue the argument," he claimed, but really to see if I could get her to look at me that way again, Nathan finished. With that intensity, that complete presence, Sophie observed this exchange with careful attention, clearly cataloging not just the words but the emotions beneath them. When did you know it was serious? Another exchange of glances, another moment of shared memory. The Whitney Biennial, they said simultaneously, then both stopped, surprised by the synchronicity. You first, Nathan offered, a small gesture of deference that seemed to surprise Olivia. We'd been dating for about 3 months, she explained to Sophie. The Whitney Museum's biennial exhibition is a major event in the art world. I was interning at the museum, helping with installation, and I invited your father to the opening night gala. I expected to be bored, Nathan admitted. Instead, I was fascinated, not just by the art itself, but by the technology being used to create and display the digital pieces. I spent the entire exhibition analyzing the systems, identifying where innovations could enhance the viewer experience. He talked about it for days afterward, Olivia continued, the memory clearly still vivid. Started sketching ideas for an interactive display system specifically designed for digital art installations. It became my first successful tech product, ArtView, Nathan confirmed. The foundation of right innovations. Yes, Nathan confirmed. But more importantly, it was the moment I realized that your mother's world and mine weren't separate domains, that together we could create something neither of us could have envisioned alone. And for me, Olivia added softly, it was when I realized he didn't just tolerate my passion for art. He found a way to integrate it into his own vision, to value what I valued, but in his own way. The shared memory hung between them, a poignant reminder of the partnership that had once seemed so promising, so complementary. Sophie absorbed this, her expression thoughtful. What happened? She asked simply. Between that beginning and the night Mom found you with Elena, how did it unravel? The direct question sobered both parents. Their meals arrived, providing a brief respite from the intensity of the conversation. When the waiter departed, Nathan was the first to respond. Success, he said, echoing his earlier explanation but elaborating now. Right innovations grew exponentially. ArtView led to contracts with major museums, which led to interest from other cultural institutions, which led to government contracts. Within 3 years, we were a significant player in the tech industry. And your father was. Working 80-hour weeks, Olivia added, no accusation in her tone, just stating facts. Missing dinners, missing weekends. When you were born, I was on a flight to Tokyo for a major contract. Negotiation, Nathan said to Sophie, regret evident in his voice. I took red-eye flights and slept in airport lounges to be there as quickly as possible. But I still missed those first crucial days. It became a pattern, Olivia continued. Important moments balanced against corporate obligations, and gradually the company won more often than the family. I told myself it was temporary, Nathan added, that once we reached certain milestones, certain levels of security and growth, I could step back, delegate more, be present more. But those milestones kept shifting, Olivia concluded for him. Always just beyond reach. Sophie nodded, absorbing this familiar story of ambition overshadowing family. And Elena? Where did she come in? Both parents tensed slightly at the name. Nathan set down his fork, his expression grave. She joined our household when you were 3, he explained. Brilliant at organization, at anticipating needs, at making complicated schedules function smoothly. She made herself essential very quickly, always available for last minute. Childcare, international travel arrangements, weekend emergencies. I was increasingly focused on you, Olivia added, looking at Sophie. On creating stability amid the chaos of your father's schedule, on maintaining some semblance of normal family life. Elena understood the company in ways few others did, Nathan continued. Or so I thought. She validated the long hours, the missed family events, made me feel that the sacrifices were necessary, heroic even, that your mother simply didn't understand the demands of building something revolutionary. Classic isolation technique, Olivia observed with the clarity of hindsight, creating division, positioning herself as the only one who truly understood. I didn't see it then, Nathan acknowledged. I was flattered by her attention, her admiration. Gradually, the emotional connection shifted, became inappropriate. Until the night of the anniversary party, Sophie concluded, connecting the narrative to its end point. Yes, Nathan confirmed, meeting his daughter's gaze directly. The night your mother found us together in my office. The night everything fell apart. Silence descended as they all processed the painful history. Sophie picked at her food, clearly still absorbing the complex narrative of her parents' relationship. What about after? She asked finally. You said you ended things with Elena immediately. What happened then? Nathan's expression darkened. As Daniel mentioned earlier, she didn't accept the ending gracefully. Began undermining me with the board, with key employees. When that didn't work, she escalated to corporate espionage, selling early access to our technologies to competitors. How did you discover this? Sophie asked, her technical mind engaging with the corporate intrigue. One of our security clients reported an unusual vulnerability, one that shouldn't have been possible without internal knowledge of our system architecture, Nathan explained. We traced it back to information that only a handful of executives had access to. Further investigation pointed directly to Elena, and when confronted, she threatened to go public with your relationship, to claim workplace harassment, to position herself as the victim. Olivia surmised. Nathan's jaw tightened at the memory. The company was in a critical growth phase. The scandal would have been devastating, not just to me personally, but to thousands of employees, to clients who depended on our security infrastructure. So you negotiated her departure, Olivia concluded. A generous package in exchange for her silence. Yes, Nathan confirmed, though, as Daniel mentioned, we also gathered enough evidence of her espionage to ensure mutual destruction if she ever broke that silence. And the part about us? Sophie pressed. About why you stopped searching. Nathan's expression grew more troubled. During our final confrontation, Elena made it clear that if I continued searching for you both, she would find a way to make it public, ugly, to paint your mother as unstable, unfit, to drag you both into a media circus. Could she have actually done that? Olivia asked, skepticism evident in her tone. She had cultivated relationships with key technology journalists, with industry influencers, Nathan replied. Whether her claims would have ultimately held up doesn't matter. The damage would have been done by the initial coverage. Your privacy, your new life would have been invaded. Sophie would have been exposed to public scrutiny, to ugly allegations. So you stopped looking, Sophie concluded. Convinced yourself it was better for everyone. Yes, Nathan acknowledged, the admission clearly difficult. I told myself I was respecting your mother's wishes, protecting you both from unnecessary pain. Perhaps that was partially true, but it was also easier, less painful than continuing to search. With no success, less complicated than figuring out how to be a father from a distance. The honest acknowledgement of his own failing struck Olivia more powerfully than a defensive justification would have. This was not the Nathan she remembered, the man who had always had a business-oriented explanation for his personal shortcomings, who had rarely acknowledged vulnerability or error. What happened to Elena? She asked, curious despite herself. She left the country for a few years. Dubai, I believe. Recently returned to head operations for a smaller tech firm in California. Nathan's tone was neutral, all emotion regarding his former mistress apparently long extinguished. Have you ever? Olivia began, then hesitated, unsure if the question was appropriate. But Sophie seemed to understand her unfinished thought. Have you remarried? Had other children? She asked directly. Nathan shook his head. No, to both. There have been relationships, but nothing significant, nothing lasting. His gaze briefly met Olivia's before returning to his daughter. The company remained my primary focus until recently. What changed recently? Sophie asked, perceptive as always. A slight smile touched Nathan's lips. I turned 40 last year. Found myself reevaluating priorities, legacy. Began the process of restructuring Right Innovations to function less centrally around me. Expanded the executive team. Delegated more authority. He paused, then added quietly, started considering what might come next. Like reconnecting with your daughter? Olivia suggested. No accusation in her tone, just clarification. Eventually, perhaps, Nathan acknowledged, though I had no concrete. Plans. No idea where to begin after so many years of silence. And then Daniel brought you my invention, Sophie concluded. This brilliant microturbine system from a 10-year-old student with a familiar surname. Coincidence? She asked, skepticism evident in her tone. I believe so, Nathan replied, though perhaps not entirely. Your natural affinity for technology, for engineering solutions. That's genetics asserting itself despite our separation. Your specific interest in renewable energy might be coincidental, or it might reflect something deeper, some inherited perspective on how problems should be solved. The suggestion that despite 5 years apart, father and daughter might share not just physical characteristics but cognitive approaches seemed to intrigue Sophie. She studied her father with renewed interest. Wright Innovations wasn't the only company interested in my invention, she said, returning to the original purpose of their meeting. Quantum and Helios both made compelling offers. I'm sure they did, Nathan acknowledged without defensiveness. Both are excellent companies with strong technical teams. But neither has your specific focus on ethical implementation, Sophie continued, or your experience with renewable energy applications across multiple sectors. Olivia watched this exchange with growing understanding. Her daughter wasn't just evaluating corporate offers, she was testing her father, assessing whether Nathan would pressure her or respect her autonomy. Whatever you decide, Wright Innovations will respect your choice, Nathan said, confirming Olivia's observation. Your invention is extraordinary, and any company would be fortunate to develop it further, including ours. And if I chose another company, would that affect? Sophie hesitated, searching for the right words. Would that affect any potential relationship between us? The question laid bare the underlying concern that her father's interest might be primarily in the technology rather than in her. Nathan's response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. My hope to know you, to be part of your life in whatever capacity you're comfortable with. That exists entirely separate from any business considerations. He met his daughter's gaze directly. I've missed 10 years of your life, Sophie. I'm not interested in missing any more because of corporate affiliations. The simple declaration seemed to satisfy something in Sophie. She nodded, her expression thoughtful rather than suspicious. I'd like to visit Wright Innovations, she said finally. See the operation firsthand before making any decisions. Nathan's surprise was evident. Of course, whenever you'd like. We could arrange it for tomorrow if that works with your schedule. Sophie looked to Olivia, seeking her approval. She hesitated, the prospect of entering Nathan's domain, the company that had consumed their marriage, triggering old apprehensions. If that's what you want, she said finally, I'll come with you. Actually, Sophie said carefully, I was thinking I might go alone, just for the technical tour. She hurried to add, not that I don't want you there, Mom, but I think I need to see it for myself, form my own impressions without history influencing the experience. The request stung slightly, though Olivia understood its logic. Her daughter was asserting her independence, her right to form her own relationship with both her father and the company that bore their name. I understand, she said, meaning it despite her protective instincts. Just be home for dinner tomorrow night. Which brings up another question, Nathan interjected cautiously. What happens after this week? Regardless of Sophie's decision about her invention, I'd like to maintain contact, to build a relationship, if you're both open to that possibility. The question hung between them, significant and complex. Olivia looked at her daughter, recognizing that at 10, her wishes deserved substantial weight in this decision. I'd like that, Sophie said simply. Regular contact, visits when possible. Nathan's expression reflected carefully controlled hope. I could come to your neighborhood, or we could meet at neutral locations, whatever works best for your comfort. We'll figure out the logistics, Olivia said, not committing to specifics, but not refusing the possibility either. One step at a time. As dinner concluded, an awkward moment arrived, the farewell, the uncertainty of what came next. Nathan settled the bill despite Olivia's protest, then walked with them to the restaurant entrance. I'll have a car pick you up tomorrow morning, he told Sophie. 10 o'clock? The technical team is excited to meet you. That works, Sophie confirmed. She hesitated, then extended her hand formally to her father. "Thank you for dinner. And for the truth." Nathan shook his daughter's hand, the formal gesture clearly meaning more to him than casual observers might guess. "Thank you for listening, for being willing to consider a way forward." As Sophie stepped away to examine a display of local artwork in the restaurant's foyer, Nathan turned to Olivia, his expression more vulnerable than she'd seen all evening. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for raising such an extraordinary daughter, for being willing to hear me out today, for not shutting the door completely." "She deserves to know her father," Olivia replied, neither warm nor cold, simply acknowledging the reality. "And you deserve the chance to know her. Whatever happened between us, that's separate." Nathan nodded, accepting the boundary she'd established. "For what it's worth, Olivia, I never stopped." He caught himself, reconsidering whatever he'd been about to say. "I never stopped regretting what I lost, what I threw away." Before she could respond to this unexpected vulnerability, Sophie rejoined them, and the moment passed. They said their goodbyes, arrangements confirmed for the morning visit to Right Innovations. As Olivia and Sophie walked to the corner to hail a taxi, she studied her daughter's profile, so like her father's in many ways, yet uniquely her own. "Are you okay?" she asked. "It's been an overwhelming day." "I'm processing," Sophie replied, the response so characteristic of her methodical mind. "It's a lot to take in, but I'm glad we had that meeting, glad we know the truth now, even if it's complicated." "Life usually is," Olivia agreed, "especially family life." Later, as Sophie slept, Olivia stood at the apartment window, gazing out at the Manhattan skyline. Somewhere out there was the penthouse they'd left 5 years ago, the life they'd abandoned in the middle of the night. Somewhere in this city were the remnants of a marriage she'd once believed would last forever, dreams she'd set aside first to support Nathan's ambitions and then to protect Sophie from their fallout. The Nathan she'd encountered today was not the man she remembered leaving. There was a maturity to him now, a thoughtfulness that had been absent in the driven young CEO. Whether that change was genuine or temporary, whether it would translate into sustained presence in Sophie's life, those questions remained unanswered. But for the first time in 5 years, Olivia found herself willing to consider the possibility that the future might include some version of Nathan in their lives. Not for her sake, that door remained firmly closed in her mind, but for Sophie's. For the brilliant, perceptive girl caught between two worlds, two parents, two possible futures. She deserved the chance to know the father behind the abandonment narrative, to form her own conclusions based on direct experience rather than second-hand accounts. It would require adjustments, boundaries, careful navigation of complex emotions. But watching her daughter's excitement about visiting Right Innovations, about exploring this part of her heritage, Olivia knew the effort would be worthwhile. Some doors, once opened, couldn't be closed again. And perhaps in this case, that was as it should be. If you're finding value in this story about family reconciliation, please hit the like button. Have you ever discovered that someone you'd written off deserved a second chance? Share your experiences in the comments below. The following morning arrived with Manhattan's characteristic bustle, the city already humming with activity despite the early hour. Sophie was ready well before 10, her excitement evident in her meticulous appearance, a neat blouse, her best jeans, even a small pendant that Olivia couldn't remember her wearing before. "Nervous?" she asked, straightening her daughter's collar in a maternal gesture Sophie would have normally resisted. "A little," she admitted. "It's weird, you know, going to this company that has my name, meeting people who've worked with my father for years, people who might have known me. If things had been different." "I understand," Olivia completed for her. "Just remember, you're there to evaluate them, not the other way around. Your invention is what brought everyone to the table." A sleek black car arrived precisely at 10, the driver confirming Sophie's identity before opening the door. Olivia hugged her daughter tightly, suppressing the protective instinct that urged her to accompany her into Nathan's domain. "Text me if you need anything," she reminded her, "and have your father bring you back by 6 for dinner." "I will," Sophie promised, her expression a mixture of excitement and apprehension as she entered the vehicle. Alone in the apartment, Olivia found herself at loose ends. Manhattan had once been her professional home, the city where her curatorial career had flourished before being set aside for family priorities. On impulse, she decided to visit the Hamilton Museum, where she now worked, to catch up on some exhibition planning. The familiar galleries calmed her, the artwork grounding her in the present moment. Rather than anxious speculation about Sophie's experience at Wright Innovations, she was examining a potential acquisition when her phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Dad's taking me to lunch with the technical team. They're amazing. Already discussing integration possibilities for my invention. Don't worry. Not signing anything, just learning." The casual dad caught her attention, a shift in language that reflected her rapid adjustment to Nathan's presence in her life. She texted back a simple acknowledgement, then continued her museum work, determined to give her daughter space for this important reconnection. Hours later, as afternoon light slanted through the museum windows, her phone buzzed again. This time, the message surprised her. "Ran into Daniel at Wright. He mentioned you might like to see your old gallery, Art Space East. Apparently, it's still there under new management. Just thought you might want to know." The message triggered a flood of memories. Art Space East had been her professional home before marriage and motherhood had redirected her path. The small but respected gallery had featured emerging artists, challenging exhibitions, work that had established her reputation in the art world before she'd set it aside to support Nathan's growing company and raise Sophie. She hadn't allowed herself to wonder about the gallery's fate after leaving Manhattan, had assumed it had. Probably closed or changed beyond recognition, like so many small arts venues in the rapidly evolving city. The knowledge that it still existed, still operated, created an unexpected yearning to see it again. Before she could overthink the decision, Olivia left the museum and hailed a taxi to the familiar address in the city's arts district. The neighborhood had changed, more upscale shops, fewer of the quirky independent businesses she remembered. But Art Space East remained, its distinctive red storefront immediately recognizable. She hesitated outside, suddenly uncertain. What was she hoping to find here? Confirmation that life had continued without her? Some ghost of her former professional self? Before she could decide whether to enter, the gallery door opened, and a woman in her early 30s emerged, keys in hand. "We're just closing, but..." The woman stopped, recognition dawning in her expression. "Oh my God, you're Olivia Keller-Wright, whatever name you use now." Startled by the immediate identification, Olivia took a step back. "I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" "Not personally. I'm Jessica Tran, the current director, but your reputation, your eye for emerging talent, your thematic exhibitions, that's legendary around here. I studied your catalogs in grad school." The younger woman's enthusiasm was genuine, disarming. "Please, come in. I was just closing up, but this is... wow, such an honor." Amused, Olivia followed Jessica into the gallery. The space had been renovated since her time, walls reconfigured, lighting updated, but the essential character remained. Currently, it featured an exhibition of mixed media work exploring urban isolation. "This is excellent," Olivia said, professional assessment overriding personal discomfort. "The curation is thoughtful, creating dialogue between pieces without forcing connections." "That means a lot coming from you," Jessica replied, genuine pleasure in her voice. "Your approach to curation was a major influence on my own practice, the way you contextualized emerging artists within broader cultural conversations, creating space for difficult work without diluting its impact." The praise, unexpected, unconnected to her identity as Nathan's ex-wife or Sophie's mother, caught Olivia off guard. For 5 years, she had defined herself primarily through those relationships, through her protective role, through her position at the Hamilton, which, while prestigious, was less adventurous than her previous curatorial work. To be recognized for her curatorial vision, her professional contributions, it was both jarring and deeply affirming. "I haven't been active in the independent gallery world for some time," she admitted, running her fingers along a familiar gallery railing. "But you're at the Hamilton now, aren't you?" Jessica asked. "Your recent textile exhibition was brilliant. You've been following my work?" Olivia couldn't hide her surprise. Of course, the art world isn't that big, especially in New York. Jessica's expression softened. "When you disappeared from ArtSpace, there were rumors, mostly about how Wright Innovations had poached you for their corporate collection. Then nothing for years, until your name started appearing in the Hamilton's exhibition credits. They toured the gallery together, Jessica explaining recent exhibitions, while Olivia shared memories of the space in its earlier incarnation. The conversation flowed easily, professional respect creating a connection that transcended the years and circumstances of Olivia's departure from the art scene. "We have an open curatorial position," Jessica mentioned as they completed the tour. "Part-time, flexible schedule, focus on emerging artists working at the intersection of technology and traditional media." She handed Olivia a business card. "Just something to consider if you're ever thinking about diversifying beyond the Hamilton. Your perspective would be invaluable." The offer, casual but sincere, lingered in Olivia's mind as she left the gallery and made her way back to the apartment. Returned to independent curation, to the edgier, more experimental world of gallery work. It seemed impossible, unthinkable with her carefully structured life with Sophie. And yet, the visit to Art Space East had awakened something dormant, a recognition of the professional identity she'd set aside first for Nathan's career and then in the urgency of building a new life for herself and Sophie. Her work at the Hamilton had been fulfilling, successful even, but it had always felt somewhat constrained, bound by the institution's more conservative approach. By the time she reached the apartment, Olivia had no answers, only questions about identity, about possibility, about what came next in a life suddenly expanded beyond the careful boundaries she'd established after leaving Nathan. She was still contemplating these questions when Sophie returned, her face alight with excitement, Nathan following a step behind with obvious pride. "Mom, it was amazing," Sophie exclaimed, barely pausing for breath. "The renewable energy lab, the microgrid testing facilities, the engineering team, they're doing work years ahead of anyone else in the industry." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Olivia replied, smiling at her daughter's enthusiasm while carefully not meeting Nathan's gaze. "Sounds like a successful visit." "More than successful," Sophie continued. "They want to develop my microturbine as part of their urban renewal projects. Full attribution. Educational trust for future studies. Mentorship program with their top engineers." She paused, then added more carefully, "And Dad says I could visit regularly, work with the team directly during school breaks." The casual dad, the excited reference to future visits, all of it indicated a rapidly forming bond that both pleased and concerned Olivia. She had wanted Sophie to know her father, but the speed of this connection, the immediate integration of innovations into her future planning, triggered protective instincts she couldn't entirely suppress. "That sounds like a lot to consider," she said neutrally. "Perhaps we should discuss the details after dinner." "Actually," Nathan interjected, his tone careful, "I wondered if I might take you both to dinner. There's a restaurant near here that Sophie mentioned you both enjoy. Tavola." The suggestion, thoughtful in its reference to their preferences rather than his own, caught Olivia off guard. "You remember Tavola?" she asked. "Sophie mentioned it during our tour," Nathan clarified. "Said it was your favorite place for celebrations." "It is," she acknowledged, touched by his attention to this detail despite herself. "That would be fine. Tavola for dinner." As Sophie disappeared to freshen up, an awkward silence descended between the former spouses. Nathan remained near the door, respectful of the boundary between apartment hallway and Olivia's domestic domain. "She's extraordinary," Nathan said finally. "Her technical intuition, her ethical awareness, her ability to see connections between seemingly unrelated systems. I've never encountered anything like it, even in veteran engineers." "She always has been," Olivia agreed, pride evident in her tone. "Though the technological focus has intensified over the past few years, nature asserting itself despite environment, perhaps," Nathan suggested with a small smile. "Perhaps," Olivia allowed, "though her ethical framework, her concern for how technology affects real people, that's not genetic, that's values. Consciously taught values by you," Nathan acknowledged without defensiveness. "You've raised her to be not just brilliant but conscientious. It's evident in everything she says, everything she prioritizes." He paused, then added quietly, "Thank you for that. For ensuring she didn't inherit my worst qualities along with the better ones." The simple gratitude, free from the entitlement she'd half expected, disarmed Olivia's carefully maintained emotional distance. She has your focus, she admitted. Your ability to see patterns others miss. Your confidence in pursuing ideas others might dismiss as impossible. And your compassion, Nathan added. Your conviction that capability brings responsibility. Your unwillingness to compromise core principles for convenience or profit. This mutual acknowledgement of their daughter's inherited traits created a moment of unexpected connection. Recognition of the partnership that had created Sophie, despite the failure of their marriage. I visited Art Space East today, Olivia said, changing the subject to safer ground. It's still operating. Different management, of course. But the essential character remains. I know, Nathan replied, surprising her. I've maintained a connection with the gallery over the years. Bright Innovations has a corporate collection, primarily works from artists you championed during your time there. The revelation stunned Olivia. You collected from my former gallery? Why? Nathan seemed to weigh his response carefully. Initially as a way of maintaining some connection to your aesthetic vision, your professional judgments. Later, because the collection had taken on a life of its own, become an important part of the company's cultural identity. He hesitated, then added, I never stopped following your career, Olivia, even from a distance, even without direct contact. Your success at the Hamilton, it mattered to me, knowing you were creating, thriving in your own right. Before Olivia could formulate a response to this unexpected confession, Sophie emerged from her room, changed and ready for dinner. The moment for private conversation passed, replaced by the easier dynamic of shared focus on their daughter. Dinner at Tavola proved more relaxed than Olivia had anticipated. Sophie dominated the conversation with her enthusiasm about Right Innovations, her questions about renewable energy technology, her ideas for future development of her micro-turbine system. Both parents responded to her excitement, their own complicated emotions set aside in favor of supporting their daughter's passion. It was only when Sophie excused herself to visit the restroom that the underlying tensions resurfaced, the two adults suddenly alone with the weight of their shared history. She's made her decision, Olivia observed, no question in her tone. About her invention, about Right Innovations. Yes, Nathan agreed. Though she wanted to discuss it with you before finalizing anything. And about you? She continued, meeting his gaze directly. She's already connecting with you, already imagining a future that includes your presence. Is that a problem? Nathan asked carefully. No defensiveness in his tone, just genuine inquiry. Olivia considered this, weighing her protective instincts against her daughter's evident excitement about discovering this part of her heritage. Not inherently, she said finally. She deserves to know you, to form her own relationship with you. I just worry about disappointment, about what happens when the initial excitement fades, and the realities of distance, of your schedule, of competing priorities emerge. A valid concern, Nathan acknowledged. One I've thought about extensively since yesterday, which is why I've already implemented changes to address it. What kind of changes? Olivia asked, suspicious of overly convenient solutions. I've instructed my executive team to clear my schedule for one weekend each month, specifically for visits with Sophie. I've also adjusted our board meeting schedule to accommodate potential school events, science competitions, other important dates in her life. Nathan's tone was matter of fact, not seeking praise for these adjustments. And I've accelerated our existing executive restructuring to reduce my daily operational responsibilities, creating more flexibility overall. The immediate concrete steps, not vague promises of future change but actual structural adjustments, surprised Olivia. This was not the Nathan she remembered, who had always prioritized company obligations over family commitments, who had always seen personal relationships as necessarily subordinate to corporate demands. That's significant, she acknowledged, unsure what else to say. It's necessary, Nathan replied simply. I've missed 10 years of Sophie's life through my own failings. I won't miss any more because of organizational inflexibility. And Right Innovations, the board will accept these changes? They already have, Nathan confirmed. The restructuring was underway before I knew about Sophie's invention, before our reunion. This just accelerates plans already in motion. Olivia studied him, trying to reconcile the decisive family prioritizing man before her with the work-obsessed husband she'd left 5 years earlier. People don't change that fundamentally, Nathan. Perhaps not fundamentally, He agreed. But perspectives can shift. Priorities can be reevaluated. Loss can be instructive. He met her gaze directly. Losing you both was the most painful lesson of my life. One I don't intend to repeat through the same mistakes. Before she could respond, Sophie returned to the table and the conversation returned. To safer topics, her invention, her school projects, her future educational plans. The evening concluded with polite goodbyes in the restaurant lobby, arrangements confirmed, for a final breakfast together before Nathan returned to his regular schedule. That night, in the quiet of their apartment, Sophie broached the subject. Olivia had been anticipating since her return from Right Innovations. "I want to work with Dad's company," she said, direct as always. "Not just for the micro-turbine development, but for everything else. The mentorship, the educational opportunities, the chance to be part of something that matters." "I thought you might," Olivia replied, careful to keep her tone neutral despite her lingering concerns. "You seemed very impressed with their operation." "It's not just the technology," Sophie explained, her expression earnest. "It's the vision behind it. The emphasis on renewable solutions, on accessibility, on energy as empowerment rather than just commodity. That matters to me." "And your father?" Olivia asked gently. "How much of this decision is about reconnecting with him?" Sophie considered this with characteristic thoughtfulness. "Part of it," she admitted, "but not in the way you might think. It's not about seeking his approval or attention. It's about discovering this aspect of myself, this inherited way of thinking that suddenly makes so much sense." Her insight, mature beyond her 10 years, touched Olivia deeply. This wasn't about hero worship or filling an emotional void. It was about identity, about understanding the genetic and intellectual inheritance that shaped her unique gifts. "If this is what you want," she said finally, "I support your decision, with appropriate legal protections, of course, and with the understanding that your education remains the priority." "Of course," Sophie agreed quickly. "Dad already emphasized that, said my academic development comes before any corporate interests." The casual dad, the easy reference to Nathan's parental guidance, these continued to unsettle Olivia slightly even as she recognized their significance in her daughter's emotional landscape. "There's something else," Sophie continued, her expression more hesitant now. "Something I wanted to ask you about." "What is it, honey?" "Dad mentioned that Right Innovations maintains a corporate apartment near our neighborhood for executives visiting from other offices." Sophie's words came faster now, revealing her nervousness. "He suggested that instead of meeting in restaurants for our visits, he could use that apartment. Be closer, more accessible." The implication was clear: more frequent contact, more integrated presence in their lives. Olivia's protective instincts flared briefly, then subsided as she recognized the reasonableness of the arrangement. "That seems practical," she acknowledged, "as long as appropriate boundaries are maintained." "He said the same thing," Sophie replied, relief evident in her voice. "Said everything would happen at whatever pace you were comfortable with, that he understood the need for clear parameters." Again, Olivia found herself surprised by Nathan's apparent sensitivity to her concerns. His respect for the family structure she'd established in his absence. "We'll take it one step at a time," she promised. "See how things develop naturally." The following morning's breakfast brought a more relaxed dynamic than previous encounters. Sophie enthusiastically discussing her micro-turbines integration with Right Innovations. Nathan outlining the development timeline and educational components. Olivia offering occasional input regarding scheduling and academic priorities. As they prepared to part ways, Nathan back to Right Innovations, Olivia and Sophie to their apartment, an awkward moment arrived. How to conclude this unexpected reunion? What farewell was appropriate after such significant revelations, such tentative new beginnings? Sophie solved the dilemma by stepping forward and hugging her father. A brief but genuine embrace that visibly moved Nathan. "I'll see you this weekend?" she confirmed. "Absolutely," Nathan promised. "I'll be there for your science club presentation on Saturday." The specific reference to an event Sophie had mentioned only in passing during their conversations demonstrated an attentiveness that impressed Olivia despite her lingering caution. This was not the distracted husband who had regularly missed family obligations. This was a man determined to participate fully in his daughter's life. Thank you for everything, Nathan said, turning to Olivia with careful respect for her personal boundaries. For these past few days. For raising her so well. The simple gratitude encompassed volumes. For bringing Sophie to the meeting. For allowing this reconnection. For the years of dedicated parenting that had shaped their remarkable daughter. We'll be in touch, Olivia replied. Neither warm nor cold, simply acknowledging the new reality taking shape around them. Later that afternoon, as Sophie worked on homework in her room, Olivia sat at the kitchen table, considering the business card Jessica Tran had given her. The part-time curatorial position at ArtSpace East beckoned, a chance to reconnect with the more experimental, cutting-edge work she'd once championed. Her phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. Sophie mentioned you visited ArtSpace East yesterday. Their current exhibition on urban isolation is remarkable. Your influence is still evident in their programming choices. The observation, perceptive and respectful of her professional identity, created an unexpected moment of connection across the distance she'd so carefully maintained. Without overthinking, she typed a reply. Their new director offered me a part-time curatorial position, focusing on art and technology intersections. His response came quickly. You should take it. Your perspective on that intersection has always been unique, seeing both the human implications and the creative possibilities. The Hamilton is lucky to have you, but they don't challenge you the way ArtSpace did. The accurate assessment of her current professional situation, something she'd barely acknowledged to herself, was startling. After a moment's hesitation, she replied, I'm considering it. Things are changing quickly. Need to ensure stability for Sophie first. Understandable, he texted back. But for what it's worth, you never needed to choose between your professional passion and being an excellent mother. You've always been capable of both. The validation of her parenting, of her career aspirations, of her capacity to balance both, touched something deep within Olivia. Something that had been wounded 5 years ago when she'd discovered that while she was setting aside her professional ambitions to support their family, Nathan had been seeking connection elsewhere. Perhaps the most significant change in Nathan wasn't his corporate restructuring or his commitment to Sophie's activities. Perhaps it was this, his recognition of her as a complete person with aspirations beyond motherhood, with an identity separate from but equal to her role as Sophie's mother. The next weekend brought Nathan's first official visit under their new arrangement. He arrived precisely on time for Sophie's science club presentation, sitting beside Olivia in the audience of parents with careful respect for the boundary between them. His obvious pride in Sophie's confident explanation of renewable energy principles matched Olivia's own, creating a moment of shared parental connection that transcended their complicated past. As weeks passed, a careful routine developed. Nathan spent Saturdays with Sophie, sometimes including Olivia, sometimes one-on-one as their comfort with each other grew. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give, respecting the boundaries she'd established with a carefulness that gradually earned her trust. Olivia accepted the part-time position at ArtSpace East, finding unexpected fulfillment in returning to the more experimental curatorial work she'd once loved. The balance between her role at the Hamilton and her ArtSpace projects created a professional synergy that reinvigorated her career in ways she hadn't anticipated. Watching Nathan with Sophie, she saw a father determined not to repeat past mistakes, attentive, engaged, fully present in a way he had never been during their marriage. Whether discussing renewable energy technologies or helping with math homework, or simply listening to Sophie's elaborate explanations of her latest interests, he demonstrated a patience and focus that seemed fundamentally at odds with the distracted executive she'd left 5 years earlier. 3 months into their new arrangement, Olivia arrived home to find Nathan and Sophie in the kitchen of the corporate apartment, flour-covered and laughing as they attempted to bake cookies from Olivia's mother's recipe. Sorry about the mess, Nathan said, noticing her in the doorway. Sophie wanted to surprise you, but we might have been a bit ambitious with the recipe selection. Mom's snickerdoodles are notoriously tricky, Olivia agreed, smiling at the domestic scene she would have once thought impossible. You need to chill the dough for exactly 30 minutes, no more, no less. Now you tell us, Sophie groaned, though her smile remained bright. Dad thought we could skip that step. Some processes can't be rushed, Nathan acknowledged with good-humored defeat. Innovation has its limits. The easy banter, the comfortable dynamic between father and daughter, it created an unexpected ache in Olivia's chest. Not jealousy, but a bittersweet recognition of what might have been if different choices had been made 5 years earlier. After Sophie went to bed that night, Olivia found Nathan cleaning up. The last of the kitchen mess, his movements careful and thorough. "Thank you," she said, leaning against the door frame. "For today. For all of this. She's happier than I've seen her in years." "I should be thanking you," he replied, turning to face her, "for allowing me this second chance. For raising her with such wisdom and strength during the years I missed." A comfortable silence settled between them, not the charged tension of their early reunions, but something calmer, more contemplative. "I took the cookies out after exactly 30 minutes, Nathan said finally, nodding toward a plate of perfectly formed snickerdoodles on the counter. "Followed your mother's recipe to the letter." "I'm impressed," Olivia admitted. "You were never one for following recipes exactly. I've learned that some traditions exist for a reason," he said quietly. "That sometimes the established path, while less exciting than innovation, leads to better results." The metaphor wasn't subtle, but it resonated nonetheless. Olivia studied him. This man who looked like her ex-husband, but moved through the world with a thoughtfulness, a patience, an awareness that the Nathan she'd married had never possessed. "People can change," she acknowledged, echoing their conversation from months earlier. "Or, at least, they can grow. With the right motivation," Nathan agreed, "with enough pain to make the status quo untenable." Another silence, this one more weighted with unspoken possibilities. "I should go," he said finally. "Early meeting tomorrow." Olivia nodded, walking him to the door. As he stepped into the hallway, Nathan paused, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "Olivia, the gallery opening at ArtSpace next week, your first major exhibition as curator, I'd like to attend, to support your work. But I understand if that crosses a boundary you'd prefer to maintain." The request surprised her. In the months since their reunion, they had carefully focused all interactions on Sophie, maintaining the separation between their personal and co-parenting relationships. "It's a professional event," she said after a moment's consideration. "You'd be welcome as a fellow professional." "Just a fellow professional?" he asked quietly. Olivia met his gaze directly. "What else would you be, Nathan?" "Someone who still believes in second chances," he replied. "Someone who understands that trust, once broken, must be rebuilt slowly, deliberately, with consistent action rather than empty promises." The simple honesty of his statement, free from presumption or pressure, caught her off guard. 5 years ago, Nathan Wright had been many things: brilliant, ambitious, charismatic, but patient had never been among them. "One step at a time," she said finally. "Neither acceptance nor rejection, but acknowledgement of possibility. We're still figuring out how to co-parent effectively. That's complicated enough for now." He nodded, accepting this boundary without protest. "One step at a time," he agreed. "Good night, Olivia." As she closed the door behind him, Olivia leaned against it, considering the path that had led them to this moment. From graduate students arguing about art and technology, to married partners, to bitter exes, to cautious CO parents, a journey neither of them could have anticipated. The future remained unwritten, the path forward not yet fully mapped. There would be disagreements about parenting approaches, about priorities, about boundaries. There would be moments of tension, of old hurts resurfacing, of protective instincts clashing with evolving needs. But watching her daughter flourish with both parents in her life, seeing Nathan's genuine commitment to growth and presence, experiencing her own professional renaissance through her return to cutting-edge curation, Olivia found herself cautiously optimistic. The betrayal 5 years ago had shattered her world, forcing her to rebuild from scratch. The painful night she'd witnessed that kiss had seemed like an ending, the death of everything she'd believed about her marriage, her future, her family. Now, with the perspective of time and the evidence of genuine change, she could begin to see it differently. Not as an ending, but as a painful, necessary transition, a breaking apart that had allowed both of them to rebuild themselves as stronger, wiser, more authentic versions of who they'd been. Some wounds never fully heal. Some betrayals leave permanent scars. But perhaps, Olivia thought as she moved through the quiet apartment, checking on her sleeping daughter, perhaps the most unexpected second chances aren't about erasing the past, but about creating a future that honors its lessons, one step at a time. Thank you for joining us for today's Cedar Light Love Story. If this tale of betrayal, growth, and cautious reconnection resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share with someone who might need to hear that second chances come in many forms. Remember, sometimes the most painful moments in our lives can lead to unexpected new beginnings, if we have the courage to face them honestly and the wisdom to grow through them. Until next time, this is Cedar Light Love Stories, reminding you that while love can break our hearts, it also holds the power to heal them in ways we never imagined.